Light microscopes produce a magnified image using lenses with about a 0.2 micrometer resolution. That's the smallest distance objects can be apart before they cannot be distinguished between. Electron microscopes have a much finer resolution at around a nanometer. A transmission electron microscope, TEM, involves firing electrons through a very thin sample. They're then focused using magnetic lenses so they form an image when they meet the film. A scanning electron microscope, on the other hand, fires a beam of electrons at different points on an object. These scatter, they're detected, and an image is produced. The downside to both of these is that they require a complex staining process. It's not just starch like for a light microscope. And as they have to be done in a vacuum, they can't be used for living organisms. In order to determine what organelles there are in a cell, we need to separate them out by cell fractionation. One way is differential homogenation. The cells are blended to make a homogenate, then spun in a centrifuge at a slow speed. The heaviest organelles bunch up at the end as a pellet, usually nuclei first. This is then removed. Leftover fluid, called the supernatant, is put in the centrifuge again and spun faster. The next heaviest organelles are separated, usually mitochondria, and then the process is repeated for all the different organelles. A cell is like a factory that's more complex than any one we could ever design. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. It holds the instructions for it to work, DNA. Stored in separate chromosomes, it's long and linear, but wound around proteins called histones. The envelope, the membrane of the nucleus, has thousands of pores that allow molecules to go in and out, like RNA, for example. It's also where ribosomes are produced, which comprise two parts, rRNA and proteins, which then move to the cytoplasm where they act as the site of protein synthesis. RER, the rough endoplasmic reticulum, is a system of flattened sacs that has ribosomes on the surface of its membrane. It's responsible for folding proteins. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum, on the other hand, is an array of sacs that produce and process lipids. The Golgi apparatus is a system of sacs with vesicles surrounding it, which are used as packaging for the proteins and lipids it processes to be delivered to where they need to be used. Golgi apparatus is like the Amazon depot. The vesicles are the vans. It also produces lysosomes, which are vesicles that contain digestive enzymes. Mitochondria are the primary sites of respiration. They're oval-shaped, surrounded by a double-membraned envelope similar to a nucleus. It also contains mitochondrial DNA. Centrioles are responsible for producing spindle fibers needed for mitosis. Prokaryotic cells, such as bacteria, are different. They still have ribosomes, though. For starters, they don't have a nucleus. Instead, DNA is found in the cytoplasm, in a region called the nucleoid. The DNA is short and circular. It can also be found in a plasmid, a ring of DNA. It has a cell wall, but unlike a plant cell's that's made of cellulose, a bacterium's is made of peptidoglycan. Some bacteria then have a layer outside of this called the capsule, which is slimy. Pili are the hair-like structures on the outside that allow it to stick or adhere to other cells. A bacterium's tail is called the flagellum, which allows it to move by spinning. You want your mind blown? Look up how it works. Essentially the same way a man-made motor works, by using electrical stators. Incredibly intricate and ingenious, but really couldn't be any simpler as it's only made up of a handful of proteins. Bacteria don't have mitochondria. Mitosis is the process that produces two identical cells for growth, repair, and asexual reproduction. The stages are as follows. Prophase, the nuclear membrane breaks down, spindle fibers appear, and the chromosomes condense. Metaphase, the chromosomes align in the center of the cell. Anaphase, the spindle fibers tighten, separating sister chromatids, which then move to opposite poles, ends of the cell. Telophase, new nuclear membranes form into two new nuclei. The spindle fibers disappear. This is technically the end of mitosis. Cytokinesis is then the process by which the other replicated organelles move to the size of the cell, then the cytoplasm divides, leaving two genetically identical cells. Before dividing, interphase is the period during which the cell replicates its DNA and creates new organelles in preparation for mitosis. Prokaryotic cells divide by binary fission. The DNA in the cytoplasm replicates, and both copies bind to the cell membrane, and plasmids are also replicated. The cell membrane grows and pinches inward between the two sets of DNA, dividing the cytoplasm and cell wall. The membrane of a cell is partially permeable. It controls what enters and leaves. The same is true for membranes around individual organelles too. A cell membrane consists of an array of phospholipids making up the bulk of it, with proteins dotted around it that aid in transporting molecules through the membrane. Glycoproteins are also how a cell is identified by others. As phospholipids have hydrophilic and hydrophobic ends, water-soluble molecules cannot pass through, but lipid-soluble ones can. Along with certain proteins, cholesterol helps provide some rigidity. Glycolipids also allow cells to bind together to make a tissue. Diffusion is the movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. They move down the concentration gradient, we say. If it can happen, it doesn't require any energy. It's passive. Only certain molecules can diffuse through a cell membrane, like non-polar lipid-soluble molecules, including gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Osmosis is the term given to the movement of water by diffusion through a partially permeable membrane. Instead of talking about concentration of the solute like we do at GCSE, we can talk about the opposite, the water potential. We don't call it water concentration, but it's the same idea. Water diffuses from an area of high water potential to that of a low water potential. The rate of diffusion and osmosis increases with a bigger surface area, a thinner membrane, a larger difference in concentrations or water potentials, or we might say a steeper concentration gradient, and a higher temperature too. Polar molecules can move in and out by facilitated diffusion. This happens via a channel protein, but it's still passive. Active transport can move all sorts of molecules against the concentration gradient, but this requires energy supplied by ATP. Endocytosis and exocytosis involve packaging up molecules in vesicles that move through the membrane in or out of the cell respectively. Cotransport is a type of active transport whereby ions are exchanged across a cell membrane. Sodium and potassium are pumped out of epithelial cells, that is, cells on the surface of an organ like the small intestine, by active transport into the bloodstream. This lowers the concentration such that more of these ions diffuse from the ileum to replace them, bringing other molecules like glucose and amino acids with them. Stem cells are those that are undifferentiated, not yet specialized. Unipotent stem cells can only specialize into one type of cell, multipotent into a small number of types, for example those in your bone marrow specializing into blood cells. Pluripotent stem cells can turn into a large number of different types, used for repairing damaged cells, and they can actually come from unipotent stem cells too, while totipotent stem cells can do it all. These are used to develop a fetus, so they're sometimes called embryonic cells. So I hope you found that helpful. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and don't forget to check out our revision app to help you test your knowledge. Links in description.